give it one more minute.
Something like a fever dream. I've been slept in wings. I think I'm seeing things like a shadow dancing us out of our clothes. I'll be damned if you love me, damned if you don't. Big shot, just come be the man I need. Tell me you got something to give. I want it. I kinda like it when you call me wonderful. Whatever the type of talk it is, come on then. I gotta know you're meant to be the.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Thursday morning for our workshop today, Embracing My Female Power. It is just me today. Katie is on holidays with her family, and I am joining you from Westminster, BC, in at the Quay, Quay, pronounced key. I didn't know that. So I'm joining you from here today at my conference. Hope you're all doing well. All right, let me just check in with you all, see if everyone is here. Okay, so today I'm just functioning. I have like one screen today. So I'm going to be managing this on my own. Want to see everyone here. So I'm going to just stop share. Actually, I'm going to go over what we're going to do today, and then we'll do our quick little check-in as I'm admitting a few more folks in. Okay. All right, so what are we going to focus on today? We're going to start with our check-in. I want to see how you're all doing. Good to see you all. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what is this thing called power, especially within, we're talking a lot about leadership, whether you're an informal or formal leader. When I talk about leadership, I really do mean emotional intelligence. And so what does power look like if we're leading through emotional intelligence? And what does it mean for us as women? And what does it look like when we use our power and when we give it away? So I want to explore that with you all today and hear from you. It's interesting to always hear from everyone in terms of how they would define power, especially within a female and leadership context, and instances when they felt like they maybe should have held on to it but gave it away, and what did it look like when they actually used it, and what were the outcomes. From there, we're going to talk a little bit about some biases and misconceptions about leadership in regards to like what does the research say today in regards to what good leadership is? What it used to be, what was really typically role modeled, and I mean, I'm going back like 10, 20 years ago, but what we're discovering is really required today, and how that aligns naturally with women's strengths. And now that hopefully you've gotten some more results back from your 360. And if you've been able to get some feedback around your strengths, especially around the question that speaks to what are 3 adjectives that best describe me, I'm really curious to hear how the strengths that were highlighted through that 360 and the feedback you got align maybe with some of the key competencies that are required to lead in a powerful and empowering way today, which aligns really nice with our whole theme of power. And then I want to talk about a really powerful way of communicating that is maybe different than what we're typically used to or have seen others, especially other leaders. It's called the coach approach. I'm curious to know how many of you are familiar with coaching. I think I asked that last week, but I'll check in with you again. I'll talk to you about our approach to coaching. And then I want to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, confidence gap theory, what the theory says about it, and spend a little bit of time identifying what it looks like within ourselves, but also times when we have combated it and what the outcome was. And then we'll do a wrap up and a checkout. So let me just stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you, make sure there's no one else in the waiting room. No, okay. Yeah, there was something else I want to say. Oh yeah, we're going to wrap up a little bit earlier today. I'm going to aim to get us out of here 30 minutes earlier. Hopefully that's good with you all. A couple of people let me know they couldn't make it today. One is at a conference and she will be joining us a little bit later, I think in about an hour or so. I just want to do a quick sound check. Can you all hear me okay? Am I speaking too loud? Am I good? Okay, excellent. Okay, let us do our check-in. And so you can either refer back to your mood meter in your workbook, or just kind of tune in with how you're feeling today, and whatever is that one word that expresses how you're doing, and you can share a context, or you just share your word, and I'm good with that. Okay, so I'm going to start with Stephanie. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning. I'm feeling happy.
Oh,
I
that's
have a long
great.
weekend ahead of me and I feel good.
That is awesome. Okay, good
Yeah.
to hear that. Hold on, I'm going to change the settings in my earbuds because I have it on my AirPods have noise cancellation and there we go. And when I have noise cancellation, I feel like I have to speak louder because I can't hear anything. Okay, this is better. Okay, Zena, good morning.
Morning. I feel proud. I just completed like a 1 month sugar diet, so I'm feeling really good that I
A
did
1 month
that.
what diet?
Sugar diet.
Sugar. Sugar diet?
Yeah.
Does that mean you ate was sugar or you got rid of
I wish
sugar?
I couldn't like eat sugar across like a certain like gram, and I did it considering I am a sugar monster. I'm very
And
proud of
the
myself.
outcome you said feels really good.
Feels really good. I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay, I'm in free.
I'm feeling a little bit down today because I got a flu coming down, so just feeling a little bit sick.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're still here with us today. Yeah, hopefully we can brighten your day a little bit. Okay, hope you feel
Thank
better
you.
soon. You're welcome. Rhonda,
I would say I'm feeling a little unsettled. I was on a conference yesterday, and then I'm have this, so you feel like when you're away, there's a lot of stuff on your plate. And then I woke up about 3 days ago with you can't turn your neck, and it hasn't gone away, and
yeah,
it's out of the blue, and you're like, what happened? So,
yeah,
but it adds to that unsettled feeling, but trucking on.
absolutely. When that was like when I had lots of stress manifesting and I wasn't necessarily, like I, it was just a lot on my plate. That's what I would get, the neck and the shoulder, and I couldn't turn my head at all. It's, yeah, not fun. I'm so sorry. I don't
And I
know.
think
Um,
I just
yeah,
literally woke up with like it, and it wasn't. There was no kind of. I maybe I was tired and I slept too heavy. I don't
yeah,
know. It just hasn't gone away. But yeah, it's so you feel like an old robot walking around with
yes.
that.
Do you use the TENS machine? Have you ever used that?
I haven't used that. I've used, because you're not supposed to use those bang things on your neck. So I try to do it on the shoulders. But yeah, I don't
Yes.
know where, I have no idea where it came from. So it's
Okay.
struggling through it. I go to the chiropractor later today. So I'm hoping it's just something's just off.
He'll,
But
he'll work it out or she'll work
yep,
it out.
struggle through it. So the way it
Yes.
is, right?
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. Christina.
Morning. I feel really good. I feel content. I feel happy. I got a great sleep last night and I'm excited about my plans for the day. Yeah, I feel
Okay,
good.
awesome. Thank you. And I see that you got the nice boardroom again.
Oh, that was a battle again this morning because I had a different room booked and I walked
Okay.
in. There's a guy in there. He's like, I'm doing interviews in here. And I'm like, well, I booked this room. And he's like, I'm sure you did, but I need I need it. And so it was this whole kerfuffle this morning, but it didn't frazzle me. I was fluid, I was water, and I just molded to where I needed to go.
Okay.
So it was fine.
Okay. I'm going to channel the fluid and water feeling. Thank you. Okay, Vanessa. Oh, yeah. Wait, you're still muted. You unmute and then unmute it automatically by itself.
No, that was me and my
Okay.
fast fingers here. I'm feeling calm, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Eve, good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, I joined in a little late.
No,
Finishing
no worries.
something.
Someone else is going to be joining us like in an hour or so. So you're all
Okay,
good.
what were we talking about? How we
Oh, one word that
feeling?
makes it how you feel today. Yeah, one word
Oh,
that, yeah.
I'm feeling good. I'm good. I can't complain. So I'm
Okay.
grateful. Yeah, thank you.
Grateful. Good, great word. You're welcome. Leah.
Um, I had originally wrote down energetic, but I'm also kind of feeling a bit worried. We've had like a threat against our school here, so we're just kind of like in limbo, waiting to see what they decide to do. So if I have to leave, I have to leave to get my kids. But so I feel a little bit worried about that. Although they kind of assured us everything's good, but I feel good otherwise. But nervous
Okay.
about that particular
Of
situation.
Yeah, of course. We completely understand you do what you need to do, and I hope everything will be okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Farah. Hi.
Hi. I'm feeling down but grateful. I re-injured my Achilles tendon, which sucks. But I am grateful because I have spent like a year and a half in physio, and so I know what to do now that I've re-injured it. So I'm hoping that this issue will go away soon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right. Nicole just checked in. So I'll do a check-in and then I'll turn it to Nicole, give Nicole a moment to settle in there. How am I doing? I came to this it's been a while since I had to go on a trip all by myself. And so I came all by myself on this trip. I had to put my big girl pants on and travel here by myself. And it turned out to be quite okay. So I was a bit nervous and a little anxious at the beginning of the week. But now today's the last day of the conference and I'm feeling good and I got a good night's sleep. That was the thing too. I was not sleeping very well. So today I'm feeling, I'd say, rested and at ease and a little bit excited too. I'm going back home today. So looking forward to that. Okay. Hi, Nicole. Good morning. We're doing our one word check-in. So I wanted to give you a second to settle in. And how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, it took me a little bit to get adjusted and figuring this out. I'll be honest, I was clicking on the wrong date for the meeting because I think it's already May 14th. So let's not do that.
Yes. Best part. We lost a week already.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, welcome. All right. Let me share my screen again and we will continue to walk through what we're going to be doing today. All right. Okay. So we did our check-in. Okay. This is where I'd like to start a little bit before we get into the whole concept of power and female power. I'm not sure if anyone has actually seen this video. Katie found, wait, did she find this video? Or did I find? I can't remember, but someone on my team found this video. And I really like it because today we're going to be talking about leadership, what it looks like, misconceptions about leadership. And this guy really talks about that in like a 3-minute video. So as you're watching this video, this is what I would like you to do. I got some notes here. I always like to make sure that people are watching videos in an active way. Let's see. Yes, okay. I want you to write 1 or 2 things as you watch this video that stand out to you. And then I'm going to check in with you all and be like, if you had to take one thing away from this video or even maximum 2 things, because there may be more than one, what would it be and why? Yeah, okay. I will press play. And then I'll do a quick sound. I want to make sure that you can all hear. Let me see. I got to look for you all here. 1 second. Where are you all? Participants. Show meeting. Oops. Okay. What are you looking at now? Yourselves or the slide deck? What do you see? Me. You see you?
I see your
Slide
screen.
deck.
Oh,
Quite
excellent.
right.
Okay. Okay. Let me press play. Okay. Hold on.
I think there's no question that we are still promoting
It's good.
You can hear it? Okay, great. Okay, I'm here.
at least as many incompetent men as we were when I wrote the original article, Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders? I am very grateful to incompetent men who keep succeeding because every time that somebody that is perceived as incompetent or not very competent gets elected or wins an executive position in a company, the article then goes back to number 1. If you seem aggressive, very assertive, bold, abrasive, overconfident, there's a strong probability that people attribute competence to you, especially if you're a man. I think there is clearly a disconnect between the attributes that seduce us in a leader, things like confidence, charisma, even narcissism and greed, and those that are needed to be an effective leader. So the data are pretty consistent here. Women outperform men in measures of leadership: self-awareness, humility, emotional intelligence, agreeableness, coachability, connecting with others, mentoring others, managing others, and KPIs like revenues and profits. That's not to say that there aren't any men who may display more empathy and coachability than women. Sure, some women are taller than some men, but on average, men are taller than women. And on average, men lead in a more absentee way, are more hands-off and more centered on themselves. And women tend to be more centered on their teams and subordinates. So on average, women display these better leadership traits more often. Women ought not to change their behaviors in order to become leaders. The world has no shortage of people who lean in when they don't have the talents to back it up. In fact, if you're really busy doing your work, managing your team, and delivering results, you probably don't have time to blow your own trumpet and lean in. Having said that, women do face a kind of double-blind dilemma. We complain about them when they don't lean in because they don't behave like overconfident men, and when they do, we also complain because they seem pathologically ambitious and we're scared of them. This is the fundamental paradox in which women are trapped. The solution to improving the quality of our leaders is not to make it easier for incompetent women to become leaders, but to make it harder for incompetent men so that we actually reward people for the potential and talent they have, as opposed to teaching them to emulate some pseudo-Machiavellian manipulative strategies that won't elevate the quality of leadership. If you're a manager and you want to combat this problem, there are some simple basic rules that everybody can apply. Fundamentally, you need to have the humility to distrust your instincts. Develop an individual direct connection with others. Pay attention to what they're doing. Use others as a validation point to evaluate people's performance, and use data, assessments, evidence to make decisions as opposed to just follow your
sorry,
gut
everyone.
feeling. So if anything, I'm proactively asking people to discriminate more against incompetent men who want to be leaders.
Okay, let me stop that. Minimize the screen here. Stop sharing. 1 second. Screen has to. Okay, perfect. I stopped sharing, right? You can see each other. Okay, excellent. Okay. Let's go around and see what if you had a takeaway, what was it and why? Stephanie.
Sorry, I'm muted there. I was just taking notes of some of the things that were in the video.
Yes.
Some of the traits that I wrote down from the video were men who appear aggressive, assertive, or abrasive are thought to be more competent.
Yeah. So that stood out to you? Would you agree or not agree with that from your experience?
The aggressive part, no. I suppose my interpretation of aggressive is different than what the video is implying.
Okay.
But assertive.
Yes.
Assertive,
okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a component of competence.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Who else? Christina.
Did you say Zena?
Oh, sorry, I said Christina.
Oh, sorry. I heard Zena.
No worries.
I heard Zena too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it rang true how, in my experience with male supervisors, that they tend to lead in a way that's self-driven and very hands-off. And whenever I have a female supervisor, they are so much more team-orientated and they really put their self to the side. Like that really rang true to me.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. Okay. Nicole?
I liked the one where they'll complain if you damned if you do, you damned if you don't kind of thing. Like I've had male managers being like, well, if I don't know, I can't help fix or whatever. So then when I do tell or share whatever, like, oh, you girls are just so hard to deal with. And it's like, he completely flipped it. And I'm like, you told me to tell you if things are going on. This is when I was like FTOing and that kind of stuff, doing orientations with new member staff and stuff. So yeah, I was like, all right, you told me to, and now you're telling me not to, because now I'm bringing problems to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry?
Oh, no, I was going to say thank you so much. And was there anything else?
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll open it up to anyone else who may want to add.
I think if that's okay, if I can go.
Yeah.
What I took away right away was that the narcissism, the arrogance, it doesn't work with women. It doesn't. And if you do have a woman that's like that, because I'd have to say maybe there's someone in my world that's like that. It's so shocking, and it's so wow, like where's this coming from? But I know how well it's not received. Whereas with men, we're kind of like, oh, okay, you know.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Some of the women in the program have said to me that it's not necessarily the men that they have maybe conflict or friction with. Sometimes it's the women in the workplace. And I think, Rhonda, what you said is like when the women are role modeling or demonstrating these more aggressive leadership behaviors that make other women feel as though they're excluded or it's almost like a competition. So I thought that was interesting as well. I remember I had brought an ally. So our last workshop, we encouraged participants to bring an ally. And so I brought an ally once, and he'd said that he'd gone to an executive leadership course, and the first time ever, there was mostly women in that course, not men. And one of the things that one woman said in the course, she goes, "Our job as women is to not knock off the crowns on other women's heads, but it's to straighten them when they're maybe a little bit crooked." And I thought that was interesting as well. Okay, so some of the things that I took away from this was, like he said, the absence of women in leadership roles has less to do with women themselves and more to do with how we interpret leadership traits. And that confidence is a trait that's more associated with men and is often misinterpreted as competence. So I thought that was a key takeaway as well. And I think we'll link to really nice when we talk about the confidence gap theory and imposter syndrome. I mean, from your own experience, when you look at the senior leadership roles in your organization, is it a 50-50? Is it mostly men, or is it the reverse? Do you see mostly women? Because I know we have a mix of different agencies. And so I was kind of curious to hear from you. What are you seeing in your agency?
I'll speak to it right away. I'm really lucky actually, because we got a couple of years ago, our new chief is a female. And what I noticed is we have multiple female high leaders, and just even my direct group, there's a bit of a change, in my deputy chief's a female now, and so it's just there's so many now. So in a peace officer enforcement role, so it's absolutely it's really, really nice to see. So I consider myself blessed. So,
and that is rare, I find. So that's great. Actually, Lori Bailey.
She's here at the Oh, no way. Yeah.
With me.
Yeah. So she was one of the inspectors, and then she just moved over to 911 as their big boss. So, yeah, she was one of the women that, but yeah, it's all over. So it is really, really refreshing. And it was my chief, who was Lori's boss before, who got me into this course, or who basically name dropped and said, Rhonda needs to go to this course. So again, super blessed. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
That it's completely opposite where I work. There is no females. In the 20 years I've worked in this place, we've had one female manager. There's no female supervisors, no female managers. No females are in any position of power in our center. So it's really good to hear that on a different peace officer scale that women are in those advanced roles or leadership roles. But here, no. It's not.
And I think that's still quite the norm, actually. I mean, what's it like in other agencies? Similar to what Leah's experiencing, or more like Rhonda, where there's a shift now?
Yeah, even from corrections too. I would say maybe we have like one female manager compared to like 15 male managers. So
yeah,
you could really see the big difference.
I know. I mean, there's one police agency that in Alberta that they finally promoted their first female sergeant. Maybe now it's about 15 years ago. And there is no female that occupies the rank higher than a sergeant. So it's still a challenge. Like, have you heard of 30 Forward? Yeah, so it was called 30 by 30. It was an initiative that started in the States through a university. It was at Yale. I think maybe it was Yale, working with a police agency. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to eliminate the leadership gender gap in male-dominated industries, specifically law enforcement. And what they said was, if we can increase the number of like frontline employees by 30% by 2030, there'll be we'll start to work towards a more gender equitable workplace. And if we have more female representation in our agencies, we'll be more innovative. And like the system will start to shift to really be more inclusive of individuals from underrepresented populations. And they saw women as the lever that could make that happen, as long as we were able to draw more women in. And so the hope was, if there was a focus on trying to achieve 30% women by 2030, that agencies would start to figure out, how do we then recruit women? And how do we keep women? What do we need to do internally to our systems, our HR processes, our culture, to be more diverse, equitable, and create a culture of belonging? That was like the big dream and the aspiration. And so Canada has brought it here, and they decided to rebrand it to 30 Forward. And right now there's like the International Association of Women in Police are doing a conference in Banff in October. They're also doing one, I think it's in Africa. I can't remember what part of the world it is, but they're doing also another conference as well, internationally. And the woman who organizes it from Ontario is working with a woman in Alberta from Medicine Hat Police Service to organize the one in Banff. But I spoke with the woman from Ontario, and I think she's the chair of the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement. And she said to me that she is a big advocate of 30 Forward, and she is meeting with agencies across Canada to educate them on the initiative and to encourage them to embrace it and to work towards it. But unfortunately, I'm also hearing people saying to me that when they're hired under the initiative of 30 Forward, they feel like there's a little bit of backlash towards them, that they're an equity, diversity hire, and that they weren't hired on their merits, but they were hired under the guise of this, because now they're just trying to achieve that percentage of 30% women by 2030. So that is like the push and pull and the complexity and the issue with some of these initiatives, that their intent is good, but sometimes their execution isn't always done in a way that is empowering for women, right? And so part of today's workshop is to start talking about that. So if you are a woman who, when you look around the room in your center, your building, your office, your district, and there's not a lot of women like you, there are certain challenges that comes with our own mindset and how we show up and be confident without being judged for that. And that's what I want to talk about today. And if you are one of the few women that get to work in an organization like Rhonda, that the tide is shifting and there's more women, that is great. But then how do we maintain that momentum? And so today is just as equally important for you all as well. And so I really want to challenge some of the assumptions that this author talked about, that we experience every day. And what does it mean for us to lead in a way that's true to ourselves? And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the stereotypes between women leadership competencies and male leadership competencies, like the stereotypes. I want to talk about them because they exist and they're real. But then I want to say, what is the right way to lead? And I'm going to bring it back to your leadership compass, your vision, like your vision statement around what kind of leader you want to be, that's grounded to your purpose, your anchor, and your values, which is your lighthouse. Because ultimately, when we talk about authentic leadership and leading in a way that fits with you and not trying to role model or mimic someone else's style that doesn't just feel right, you go always back to your leadership compass. That's your North Star. That's the compass guides you. And that's what I mean by an authentic approach. So with that, let me share my screen again, because this will be our first activity, which will be a think and share activity. Okay, where are we at here? Move this over to the side. There we go. Okay, so this is a think activity, and then we'll And now I'm going to put you into small groups, and then I'll give you the instructions of what the next activity is. So, what comes to mind when you hear, just look at the word power. I think this is in page 58 in your workbook, or if your workbook's not handy, grab a piece of paper. And I want you to brainstorm in the next 30 seconds all of the words that come to mind when you hear the word power. Okay, go. About 10 more seconds. Okay, time. Okay. Now I want you to think of, for the next 30 seconds, all of the words that come to mind when you hear the word woman or female. Go. And that's fine. Okay. I am going to open, let me stop sharing here. Okay. Yes. I'm gonna open the rooms in a moment. There are a few breakout rooms that I have here, 3. There are about, 3 people in each breakout room. What I'm gonna ask you to do is when you get in your breakout room is I want you to ask you to put those words together, female power, and what does that mean to you? If you had to look at share the words that you came up with when you brainstormed power, and then the words that came up with when you brainstormed female. And then if you have to put those words together, female power, how would you, I guess, reconcile those two definitions into one cohesive one? And what I'd like you to do, in addition to that, what does female power mean to you? And then I want you to talk about a time when you felt like you were leading through female power based on the definition you came up with, and maybe a time that you gave it away. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? Does that make sense? And if you have to work through it and you're not sure, that's okay. Part of this is just thinking about it in a different way. So before I open up the rooms, I want to see, and I'll give you 10 minutes. Are there any questions? Okay, so room 1, Christina, Nicole, Rhonda, and Zena. So 4 people there. Room 2, Eve, Stephanie, and Vanessa. And room 3, Amanpreet, Farah, and Leah. And then I'll pop into the rooms and see how it's going. Okay, the rooms are open. Okay, timer starting. Okay. Yeah. Ah, okay. Now what? Why aren't these things on? I need to turn them on. No, it's missing. Well, then this one goes here, here. Okay, go for it.
All right. So we spoke about the definition of power, the words that came to our mind being
Yes.
control, influence, and then with women, some words that were kind of similar with like kindness, warmth. And so just a mixture of that would be female power. But something that was really similar in all of our topics were standing up, for example, showing power, female power by standing up for others. If you have sort of like control or you're in that position of power and you see maybe other women being picked on or they need some form of help, standing up for them and showing them power really is. We also talked about sometimes female power not being able to be utilized with men. So we had talked about sometimes, showing that female power to men, they're always like dumbfounded or they're like, what's happening here? So sometimes kind of mixing that and making sure, for example, when you're speaking with women, you're able to show that power and they understand it. But with men, you have to sometimes be more assertive, be more confident, kind of get to the point. We also talked about female power sometimes being limited because of nature. And that doesn't really mean giving it away. It's just because sometimes in some situations, men are stronger naturally, but it doesn't mean that you're giving up that power. It just means in that situation, sometimes nothing you can do. And sometimes it feels like you're giving away that power.
Right. Okay. Hmm. Can I ask, when you said sometimes there's nothing you can do, did, do you feel comfortable to share a little bit more about that in terms of like how it was discussed in
So
your room?
Yeah, Rhonda had that point about, and when I mean nothing you can do, I'm not saying like being totally helpless, but sometimes some things, sometimes we need more physical, and men are stronger physically sometimes. And so it kind of feels like you're giving away that power, but it's not like willingly, it's just what the situation is. Rhonda, do you want to speak on that a bit?
Sorry, I was referring to when especially if you're an officer, if you're one of the folks in our rooms or in our groups that are actually officers, is that when a physical altercation occurs, quite often the men just take over. And it
Hmm.
tends to, we feel like we're giving away our power because, there's just that assumption they're the ones. But I countered that with, and I think that's when you came in, Joanna, is that I
Yes.
countered that is that a lot of times what I'll do is I will use my voice or my perspective to thwart that. And that's how, although my power may be given away if there's a physical altercation, because the guys are just going to come in and crush skulls, as it were. But I could give it away, or I could gain it back by, and I mentioned that more often than not, when we are working, I will use that. And it's, my physical presence. I'm a little bit older. And I joked with the girls that I will literally say things. I use that disapproving mom or that disapproving wife tone with the people I'm dealing with, like, do better. or I can, are you really going to make me have to deal with this? Like, come on, you know better. And it'd be shocked how effective that is. But to me, that's my power, because do I want to have to touch anybody and get into a fight? Absolutely not. So yes, I lose my power if it does go that way, because the men, are going to just take over, and they're the big guys. But if I can thwart it and gain it back by avoiding that, then there we go. And you can't tell me the men don't know that, right? Not everybody wants to touch and have to get into fights. So if they can rely on us to deal with that, but that was just what we talked about.
Yeah. So my son thank you for sharing that. That's an important thing to talk about. And guess what? A lot of the women who are police officers that interact with the public, or even sheriffs that we've had in the program that interact with the public, and sometimes use of force has to be applied, very similar experience. They have to go and execute a warrant. The guys will be like, okay, gals, you go watch the back door, or get behind us, and it's like, I got hired just like you did. I went through recruit training just like you did all the control tactics like you did. I had to engage in the ground fighting just like you did. I'm trained to do this. The last workshop, which is Power of Allyship, we're going to talk about benevolent sexism. Have you heard of that term? I might as well introduce it now, and I'll reintroduce it later. And hopefully, if we have a few allies, they'll learn about it too. Benevolent sexism, it's like good old-fashioned sexism, but not as obvious. When people are acting in like a male chauvinist sexist way, it's quite obvious and it's in your face. But benevolent sexism is not as obvious, but it's just as damaging. And there's three beliefs or misbeliefs that really kind of feed into what benevolent sexism is. And one of the misbeliefs is that men are responsible for women, and men have to take care of and protect women. And how that manifests in the workplace, for example, is, and it happens just the way that Rhonda spoke about, which other women in this program have shared, or another participant who now sits at a very high level executive position in a law enforcement agency. She shared with us that she was in an acting position in a superintendent role. Her agency was, she was introducing a new unit in this law enforcement agency that was really high pressure, high political focus, and she did amazing. And so when the competition opened and she went through the whole process to be promoted now like fully into that superintendent role, she didn't get the job. And when she asked for feedback, her deputy chief said to her, well, we feel as though you're tired, you've done a lot, we want to give you a break. Most of them, the deputy chiefs, actually all of them were men, and they were the ones who were sitting on the panel. Ultimately, we're going to choose who was going to be the superintendent. Like, we feel like you need a break and we want to give you a break. So she walked away and she's like, what the, who are they to tell me I need a break? And so she went back to her deputy chief and she's like, I think I have to advocate for him. And this was happening while we were like, this was like one of the first cohorts of Woman Up. And so she was sharing this with us. And she said, I went back to him and she said to him, and she explained to him, and she advocated for herself. So maybe in that instant when she heard that, she felt like she gave away that power and she walked away, and she's like, wait, this is wrong. So she went back, she resumed that power she had, and she sat down and she used a really, assertive but compassionate and patient tone with him, and some of the elements that we'll talk about in the Kathy approach, but sought to understand in terms like, what was this narrative of me being tired and me needing all of these men in this room to protect me? Like, tell me more about that. And through that conversation, the deputy chief realized that what they did was wrong. And so she advocated for herself, and she said, I'm going to empower you, my boss, the deputy chief, to advocate for me, which is what allyship is, and go back in that room and say, what we did was wrong. We don't need to protect her. She's capable and ready, and she can make that determination herself. And she got the job. They went back to her and they said, yeah, you're promoted. What an incredible story that is, right? But that's benevolent sexism in action. That's when men feel like they need to come in and protect women. And that's what it looks like when we reassert ourselves and reclaim that power and advocate for ourselves. But then part of that power, and what she did so brilliantly, was she empowered him. She didn't shame him. Like, listen, are there times that I've done that? Have I, times where I've acted in benevolent, sexist ways towards other women, thinking that I'm helping them? Yes. And that's why we have this course and why we talk about it, because we don't do it intentionally to harm other people. We think we're doing something good. But so she just was patient with him and compassionate. She explained it and empowered him then to go and advocate for her. So I think that's a great example of what female power is and how it can be used to educate, support, and empower other people to be true allies. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the second room then. Eve, Stephanie, and Vanessa. Some of the key discussions there, or even like what's resonating with you from what we've just talked about. Stephanie.
I had a bit of a harder time with it. I'm in a civilian role. So one of the things that I mentioned is throughout my career here, I've always had female supervisors. I directly report to female supervisors. And then prior to working here, I also worked very closely with groups of women. The uniform side of things will be men most of the time. But so we do have like our civilian management, and then we have uniform management above that. So they tend to be men in communications, but the civilian side of things tends to be women. So I had a bit of a tougher time because I work with mostly women.
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, even in those instances too, we can be, using our power, or we could be giving it away. So thank you for saying that too, because I think even like there were times where I've worked in female-dominated workplaces too, that also had the challenges presented. Like there were, sometimes it's just about like there's conflict in the workplace, and how do you work through that, regardless of whether there's mostly women or men. And so I encourage all of you, especially like if you are working in a more women-dominated space, to think about, well, when are there times where maybe there is conflict, or maybe there's an opportunity for me to advocate for someone, and how could I be doing that in a way that just feels more authentic to me too? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Eve, I saw that you unmuted.
Stephanie already mentioned it, but we talked about, because the question was female power, like when the word comes up, what resonates with us about female power, and we came up with so many words, and which included like being knowledgeable, confidence, respect. There was being influential, and also strong, empowering, and the woman part was where mother, daughter, wife, and all those caregiver things came up, decision makers, and we felt like, from my experience, I'm coming from a not-for-profit sector where women are leading than men. So I'm familiar with seeing women in leadership roles, because that's the sector that I'm coming from. And only that when it comes to sitting at the tables where there are like steering committees, you're going to find that men are majority, even if the women are many, but we don't sit at those major tables that decisions are being made. And that's where we ended up saying that we need to kind of continue maybe being knowledgeable and trying to see how best we can sit at those tables and lead as well. And because we know what men know, we just need to know how to get to those tables and also be at the decision-making tables.
Absolutely. I started in the nonprofit sector, and you're right. And I also worked a little bit in the education sector. And when you look at education, it's the women who are the teachers, even, they're the ones who are in the classroom. But then you get to the superintendent rank, There's very few women. So the decision makers are the men, and the women are the ones who are in the classrooms, right? And so we do, and I love how you use the word influence, because like, what does influence mean, and how do you nurture influence? How do you influence other people? So next week when we talk about my success circle and who's in your network, and part of the skills that are required to build a good success circle is influence. So I'm going to come back to influence in a second, because I want to go to Vanessa.
And then just quickly to answer that influence piece, I think that's a lot of relationship building. And I think
Yes.
that's also, that's also for females. I think that's generally easier on females than it is on males. That's not to say males aren't, but I come from the uniform side. So like when we were talking about it, I was just kind of relating it to what's kind of going on here with the 30 Forward pledge and stuff. Like we've signed on to it here, and
Yes.
it is a big thing here. And I'm in recruiting, so there is a big shift, like who we're looking for and how we look for, support other women to try and get in. But in regards to women in leadership, I personally have been very lucky to have really like great role models, seeing a lot of actually female movement. And we've just had a promo process where there has been a lot of female movement, but unfortunately with that does come that backlash. There is the upset guys who are, they're only getting it because they're trying to put women through. Or even before the process, a certain amount is going to just be females because we have to do this 30 Forward. So I do see that there is a backlash, and unfortunately, I think that's just with women having that. We do have the influence, we are capable, but we do walk that fine line of to be leaders. We do have to be assertive, but we can also be assertive in, I guess, a nicer way, maybe. I don't know, but so we're not seen as bitchy, right?
Right.
Because as soon as we try to lock it down and get shit done, all of a sudden we're bitches, right? So, but if it was a guy, it'd be okay. So that was kind of my take on for women and power. I think it's a lot of influence and empowering each other.
Yeah. So I think I would say there's a way to be assertive and be assertive, but still staying, if you are assertive and you're true to your leadership compass, right? That vision statement that you wrote, then I think that's the right way to do it. And the people who are in your inner circle, part of that success circle, are the ones who will recognize that and appreciate that and feel connected to that, right? And so that's where credibility comes from. When we lead in a way that feels true to us, we can be assertive and we can be strong and we can be powerful and still authentic and credible and trustworthy. There'll always be a few people that may not necessarily appreciate that kind of leadership, but if they're not part of your success circle, then what we need to figure out and work with it through that is, how do we then not make that matter to us as much as the other people who are more important to us? So it's being able to differentiate the voices that matter from the voices that don't. And there'll always be the voices there that do not appreciate or respect us, even though we're leading in an authentic way. And over time, we have to learn how to make sure that those voices don't occupy the space in our head that is robbing us from our abilities to actually do what's important to us. Where they say, don't let that person take up free rent space in your brain. Yeah. And that's a struggle for me. Sometimes I give those voices a lot of space in my mind and a lot of mental attention. You know what? We're human at the end of the day. And sometimes I think I lean more on trying to be a people pleaser, but I also realize, where my respect and credibility comes from, when I'm able to say nope to that and keep going forward in a way that's true to me. I start to realize that there's other people that appreciate and respect that will naturally gravitate towards me as I gravitate towards them, because gravitates towards like. And I think influence is all about, and I've read this great book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And he speaks level 1 is leading through your role and position. Level 5 is leading through relationships. As a level 5 leader, which is the highest level of leadership you can attain, level 5 leaders develop other leaders. And level 5 leaders are emotionally intelligent. And what they do is they go to people. They don't wait for people to come to them. And I feel like the people that call us a bitch are the ones that wait for people to come to them. And when they see that we're not going to them, that we are going towards others who deserve our attention, our respect, our leadership, they call us a bitch perhaps. And you know what? That's okay. Stay where you're at, and we will function in our space. I do love the 30 by 4 because if we can bring more women in who understand that and lead in that way, the culture in our organizations will shift. So I'm at the conference of the CAPE is the CAPE stands for Canadian Association of Police Educators. And day one, they had the police governance and oversight committee. They were kind of like just like sitting on a panel and they were talking to them. And one of the things that they said as a police governance board, the thing that what's the one thing that they're really, there's just two things, but there's one thing that they're really concerned about. And they're hyper focused on when it comes to law enforcement agencies. What do you think it is?
No idea.
Culture. Because if a police agency or law enforcement agency has a good culture that's inclusive, creates a culture of belonging, which includes like women and people from other underrepresented populations, they know they will police better. They will provide better services to the community. Like one of the overarching goals of every law enforcement agency is community trust. How do we build community trust? How do we build trust with the members of our community if we are not building that internally? And so for them, it's like, what are you doing to create that culture? And so the things that we're talking about will get us towards that culture, that place where we need to be. So I think female power and embracing that in a way that's authentic to us is a way that we can start to influence the culture in a better way. Rhonda, and then I'll go to the last group, which was Amanpreet, Farah, and Leah. Leah, I want to see what thoughts you had or discussions and insights. Rhonda?
Sorry, I just had a comment. And one thing I noticed, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed this before, I find that if there's something like I'm a classic overthinker and I think about what everyone's thinking and blah, blah. If I'm dealing with one of my male officers and maybe something didn't go the way they expected, and I'm always like, oh God, they're going to have this harsh hurt feelings report and blah, blah, blah. And 9 times out of 10, they just don't care. It just goes right over them. They're like, oh yeah, do, and they go off in the world. But if I'm dealing with a female colleague, and I think of anyone, and I know this is true from all those times I played sports with women and even high school, they will hate someone till the end of time and they will never let it go. And I don't know if anyone else has dealt with that. I remember playing sports and, oh, I hate that girl. She elbowed me right in the chest in grade 8 basketball, like just ridiculous. And they'll hold on to it. But I find that continues on today in the workplace. And that's something that I struggle with a little bit, where the guys just let it go. They don't really care. It's like, oh, whatever, So sorry, it was just an aside when we were talking about female and men and how we deal with people.
Yeah. I think it's important to talk about because that is something, that other women have shared. So let's put that in the parking lot for a second. I want to come back to that, and let's go to the last room and see what would you like to add? What were some of the discussions in your room? So I think that was Farah, Amanpreet, and Nicole, I think, right? Was it? No? Hold on. Let me see. Who was in the last room? Yeah. Sorry. Leah, Farah, and Amanpreet. Sorry. Yeah.
I can go, and then anyone else who wants to add can add. I think, when it came to defining power and female, a lot of the same words came to mind for power. Mostly had like negative connotations when it came to power. Because like we're Leah and Amanpreet work in the correction space. And then with female, like caring, kind, like those are words that that came up. Times where we were leading for female power, was influencing. So we would do the research and indicate to like a male counterpart, well, we're not trying to argue with you, but this is what we need. This is why we think that we're right. And then other times when we would give it away or make ourselves feel small, we would be quiet, even like if we know the answer, but we just didn't want to make anyone look bad. So yeah, so we would just be quiet.
Right. Yeah, I can relate to that too. Okay. Anyone else from that room? Okay. Okay, let's go back to the comment about women in the workplace and holding grudges. Um, any thoughts about that?
I would agree with that. I hold grudges.
You hold grudges? Okay.
I am aware that I hold grudges, but as I've gotten older, and I have met more people and been influenced by more people, I would say now I am choosier with the grudges that I hold. Like they actually have to like mean something to me. 'Cause like, I'll just call it like a small infraction would be like, oh, whatever, right? Like maybe they were just having a bad day.
Okay. Okay. Which is good. There's some growth there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I guess it's like, what kind of a culture do we want in our workplace? And what are the behaviors that we want to recognize and reinforce? And how do not everyone is self-aware in regards to like our behaviors and how they're helping us achieve the goals that are important to us, help us in creating a workplace that's really positive. And so if part of it is working on that within ourselves and identifying what are those behaviors that are true to the authentic way we want to live and lead, and which ones are not, and working on that first on an individual level before we can try to influence positive change in others. And not everyone is self-aware. And so, I know someone who is like that and holds grudges. And part of it is trying to help them identify, which is, I like the Kathy approach, is like, how is that serving you? Like how is that behavior or that mindset supporting you in achieving things that are important for you? If the workplace is an important place that you go to every day and you're working with this person, how is that helping you achieve your day-to-day? How is it helping them achieve the day-to-day? So these are some of the questions that I always ask to get people to understand and then explore the root cause. What is the root cause of where this is coming from, and why is it so necessary to hold on to that? Sometimes when people feel as though they've been harmed, it is hard for them to be empathetic towards that person. But then what does that do to us internally and how we interact with other people? One of the things when we talk about creating true psychological safety, I say, if you really want to act in a way that makes people feel safe to speak up, you have to look internally to say to yourself, what do I have agency to do and to combat and to change and to try to influence through relationship building? And I guess at the end of the day, is if we can do some of that, then we know that we have tried. And also we can't control other people. And so if people make the decision that that's what they need to do to survive and be happy in the workplace, and hold on to that grudge, and then if we've tried to influence in the sense where we're asking questions and getting them to see how that is serving them or not, maybe they'll change. Not everyone's self-aware, right? So part of our rules, when we become more self-aware and become more emotionally intelligent, can we start to nurture that in other people? And also doing that while still protecting our own energy levels too is important. Okay, I want to wrap up this conversation. I just have a couple of things that I'd like to share as we move on. Hold on. I have a good definition here. Okay, so this comes from Carolyn Hilburn. She was the very first woman, I have my notes here, who received tenure in the English department at her university. And that wasn't that long ago. So then when we talk about women occupying senior leadership positions in organizations, it's very true in academia too, that some of the top positions are not always held by women. So yes, she's an author and academic at Columbia University and the first woman to receive tenure in the English department. And this is how she defined power. So she defined it as the ability to take one's place in whatever discourse is essential to action, and the right to have one's part matter. I really like that definition because to me, what it means is, first of all, I matter. I was hired here for a reason. I have skill and competence. And what I do here and what I say here matters. So every time I choose not to speak up when I do have something to add, out of fear of being judged, I'm giving that power away. I'm also disservicing my colleagues and the overall organization because what I have to say does matter. And so if I decide to find that agency and that courage within to act, that's me then showing that power and sharing that power with other people, if that makes sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is understand that you matter. What you have to say is important. And when we hold back from speaking up, how is that serving us and how is it serving others? And I've had other women share that when they've decided to like take the risk and step outside of their comfort zone, speak up in a meeting that they were maybe intimidated to speak up at or speak up in, men also felt the same way. And it's not uncommon that she told me once that a guy came to her office after, he's like, thank you for saying that because I wanted to say something and I didn't say anything at all. So it's not that this phenomenon of like not always, exerting or influencing or advocating for ourselves is a women thing. Men also feel that too. And I think it's important to know that when we speak up, it's not just the other women in the room that are watching us and learning from that, men are too. And so we will never truly know what our influence and the reach of that influence is until we start to confidently lead through the power that is innate and true to us. How does that sound? Okay. All right. Before we move on, any last thoughts or comments or insights? What do you think about this definition? Okay. All right. Before we do this, let me just stop sharing. Why don't we take, because we're almost at the hour and a half mark, let's take a 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about what good leadership is. We're going to talk about misconceptions, beliefs, stereotypes about male versus female traits of leadership. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the research around what good transformational leadership is. And then from there, we'll get into Kathy. All right, so let's take a quick 10-minute break. I'll see you back at 1:30. Okay, let's see where we're at. Welcome back. Okay. All right. Let me bring up my screen again. Here we go. Okay, there we are. Welcome back, everyone. All right, let's see where we are at. Okay, so this is in page 59 in your workbook. Okay, I want to unpack the beliefs regarding female and male leadership traits. And I'm just going to start by saying I'm not advocating for one or the other, rather engaging in a discussion to unpack some of these beliefs and assumptions about the difference between the two. All right, so here's the individual activity. I want you to think about same thing, and I think you're going to see a bit of a theme emerging here in terms of what you just did to hear, but on an individual level, and then we'll share back in a large group discussion. But over the next 30 seconds, I want you to capture all of the words that come to mind when you think of traditional, I'll even say stereotypical female leadership traits. What are those? And capture those over the next 30 seconds. Another 5 seconds. Oh, thing in the chat. 1 second. Oh, sorry, Leah. Yes. What are some words that come to mind when you think of the like female leadership traits, traditional, stereotypical female leadership traits? And brainstorm those. I'll give you a little bit more time, 10 more seconds. Okay. Now male leadership traits. Brainstorm words that come to mind when you think of male leadership traits. And I'll give you 30 seconds for that. Okay. All right. 1 second. Okay, I want to bring it back to see you all. Okay, here we go. Okay. Female. What were some of the words that you got? Eve? Oh, still, we can't hear you. You unmuted, but I can't hear you. There we
Can
go.
you
I
hear
can hear
me?
you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Just a couple of words under your list of female leadership traits.
Sorry, can you come back to me again? I just got distracted. I wasn't listening, so let me come
No,
back.
no worries. No
Sorry,
worries.
I sit at an area where everyone comes and talks to me. So
And that's not an issue. Thank you. What are some of the words that, so I'll just open it up to anyone then. Got a couple of words from your list that you brainstormed around what are traditional, stereotypical, what comes to mind when you think of female leadership traits?
I'll go. I said strong, smart, confident, and empathetic. Because
Empathetic, okay.
yeah, if I see a woman in a leadership role and where I work, it's like you worked your butt off to get there, and you had to probably take some blows to get there too. But I feel like a confidence for sure when I think of the women.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who else? Farah.
I put coaching and teaching.
Okay, great. Thank you. One more person.
I put team player and organized.
Okay. All right, let me see what I have on my list here. 1 second as I share my screen. Slowly try to make my way to my screen here. Give me a moment. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so some of the stuff that I have here are probably similar to what you have. So I have the open to diverse perspectives, communicative, meaning they communicate well. And we're going to talk about how to communicate in a second or different ways to communicate. Good listeners. Yeah, so probably communicate a lot through listening, asking good questions, seeking input, compassionate. And they say compassion is the highest level of empathy. So someone said empathy, recognize other strengths, and maybe less of an ego. They don't necessarily lead through their ego, hence influence. And we talk about influence is leading through relationships, which means it's not all about you and ego, but it's all about making space and room for other people. Okay. What about men? Male leadership traits. What were some of the traits that you have under there? Who would like to share?
I'll share again. I guess
Yeah.
when I started writing down, the first thing that came to my mind was control, but then also like we do have a lot of men that are confident and smart in their position, but I also put loud and in charge. So
Okay.
that was my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Rhonda, do you have anything on your list?
Sorry, I get the same thing. People ask me questions all the time. I had decisive, dominant, assertive.
Okay.
Powerful.
Okay. Nicole, did you have anything on your list that you could share? Same thing? Yeah, same thing. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say I'm pretty much gonna piggyback off those ladies. I think they've hit a pretty good chunk of points that I would have said as well. So
Right. Okay. Okay. Let's see what I have here then. Yeah. Focus on processes, command and control, results driven, problem solvers, unlikely to reward, quick to punish. Okay. This is a harsh list. This is really okay. Is this reality for you? Do you feel like in your workspaces, for those of you who do work with men and women, do you see these stereotypes coming up? Kind of, yeah, okay. I mean, your list came from somewhere. It came from your experiences, your instincts, right? Okay. Now, is there a time and a place to lead more like what's under the female leadership traits category? And is there a time and a place to lead maybe more in regards to like the male leadership traits as we see stereotypically as we've kind of classified them? What do you think?
I think sometimes when maybe if there is especially in our line of work, if there's a big incident or, a big thing, instead of the stereotypical female where we're, empathizing and we're worried about what others are, we need to focus on the process. We need to get down. We gotta, I say this a lot, but the hurt feelings report has to be shelved and we need to get something done.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk about is like, ideally, I like to just talk about what we face every day, and these are the stereotypes. Ideally, what we'd like to do is kind of remove the stereotypes around female ways to lead versus male ways to lead. But I will say, when you look at what we're learning about what it takes to be a good leader today, and this is true if you're an individual contributor and a formal leader, whether you have people reporting to you or not, because even if you don't have people reporting to you, influence is that much more important. I'd say definitely as a formal leader, you have to lead through influence. But when you don't have the title, influencing becomes really, really important. And I'd say it's, if you do have aspirations to become a leader, practicing these traits, these competencies, these skills is important to do before you become promoted. And so what the research is telling us is, in order to have to lead an organization or to work in an organization that is innovative, ahead of the curve, and I would say the industry and the sector you work in, government and law enforcement, I would say being innovative, staying ahead of the curve is critically important because of things like community trust, because of like the supporting our community members, keeping our community members safe, keeping ourselves and our peers safe. Challenging the status quo is really important. So how do you do that? What we're discovering is transformational leadership competencies are more important to succeed today in today's world workplace than transactional. And so transactional, if you look at that list on the left, is typically the stereotypical male ways to lead. And for many, many, many years, that is how people led. But what we're discovering is the right transformational is more powerful. And if you look at those, I think they're very much aligned with the competencies of emotional intelligence. But there is a time and a place, and that's why we have the arrow there, because sometimes it is about you need to focus on results. Sometimes you need to be direct, and other times you can take the time that is required to communicate, get cooperation, get buy-in, engage in inclusive decision making, focusing on learning and growth. I don't think it's one or the other, but a blend of both. And the situation should dictate or influence and guide what leadership approach you go towards. So I think the compass, your leadership compass, your anchor, your lighthouse, right? Your purpose and your values is who you are. That should never change. And that is leading through emotional intelligence. But the circumstance, the person you're working with, you may want to be more transactional than transformational. But there always is a time and a place for transformational. Even if like there's a critical incident and you have to be direct, you can be direct, but then when you debrief and you check in with people, you can engage in a more transformational way. So let me just connect with you all and ask you, like, have you heard of these two different ways of leading, transactional versus transformational? Yeah, okay, some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay. And so this is when we talk a lot about leadership. Many of my clients too are saying, I want to embed more transformational leadership approaches. So that is true for the frontline team leaders all the way up to the executives. And that's what my clients are saying to us. We need to focus more on transformational because everyone, especially in law enforcement, are tending to lead in a transactional way, which is a little bit more focused on command and control. And so when we're coming into these classrooms and these opportunities to teach people, we are focusing a lot on what you see in that right-hand column. It's about how do you communicate in a way that inspires people, that makes people feel like they're included, that what they bring to the table matters. And are we making the time to mentor, coach, and develop other people? So how can you demonstrate those behaviors under the transformational column in your everyday work, regardless of your rank, your position, or your role? When have you demonstrated these behaviors? So just take a moment and start to think about your day-to-day and identify times that you actually are leading in a transformational way. And then I'd love to hear from at least one or two people, if you can give me an example of what that looks like for you in everyday practice. And if you know what the coach approach is, we're going to get into that in a moment, but the coach approach is listening and asking questions to seek to understand. Maybe here's another question. When you reflect on who you are and how you show up day to day, are you interacting with people more in a transactional way or in a transformational way? Where on the continuum do you find yourself living most of your day? Christina.
I'm definitely in the transformational category, almost unilaterally, like completely just naturally.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of outcomes do you get when you act in ways that are transformational?
Oh, very positive. Very positive. I notice it, like, especially like inclusive decision making. Like, even though I'm a senior officer on a unit, even if with a new staff, I like if we're about to deal with something kind of, a situation, I'll sit down with them and I'll ask, like, what's your opinion? Like, how should we attack this? Let's make sure we're all on the same page. What do you think we should do? And just kind of get ideas from everyone, no matter, because seniority is kind of a big deal here. And a lot of people think, well, I'm senior, I call the shots, and I very much treat people equally and let their voice be heard and then communicate it so they feel valued. And I find definitely it's a positive reaction. Yeah.
It's a good segue into what we're going to do in a moment. A lot of leaders will ask me, like, how do I motivate and inspire people? When you lead through command and control and you just tell people what to do, like you were saying, Christine, like some of the senior leaders do, it robs people from their sense of autonomy. People want to feel like they can control their day to day for the most part, right? And then they can make choices and make decisions and take actions that make them feel empowered and powerful, rather than always being told what to do. Like, you hired me because I bring a certain skill set and knowledge here, and then you're telling me what to do and not asking me to think for myself in some ways, right? So when we lead through an inclusive way, when we ask for people for their input and we encourage people to implement the ideas that they came to the table with, they're more bought into it, right? But also gives us an opportunity to see if they're on the wrong path, how better to support them so that they get back on the right path. And the coach approach is just that. It's really that. And I find even when I lead too, sometimes when my team gives me feedback that they feel like sometimes I leave them out of decision making, I do see how that impacts their sense of motivation and their performance. So motivation and performance are linked. The more motivated we are, and the more we feel like we belong, our performance goes up. And when we feel like that we're not given the opportunity to share our ideas or influence decision making, our performance goes down. Now, that's not to say that, sometimes people have an idea that we can't implement. It's not about implementing everyone's idea. It's about maybe explaining why some ideas can go forward and why some can't. And I think it's about the conversation that matters more than anything. Okay, thank you. Who else? One more person. Yeah, Nicole.
I've gone like from transactional to transformational, like in one whole situation. Like
Yeah,
in
tell me.
corrections, like when I was supervising, I was dealing with one individual on a unit that the unit needed different officering. We're on a treatment unit and she's very strict, just stern, like it's black and white for her in corrections. And it makes a difference on that type of unit, changes the environment and stuff when she's direct like that. So I went to her and I was like, okay, don't do that. Like we can't do that kind of thing. Explain why. And then be like, I know you hear what I'm saying and I know it makes sense and stuff. And I know next time, like you'll choose differently or think differently before you do the action and stuff. Like I told her the direction and then motivated her and gave her praise actually kind of towards the end, because I'm like, you are a good CO on this unit. Like we do appreciate the things you do. Like you're doing good. Just certain situations, I want you to think a little bit more before you act and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've done stuff like that. So.
What was the outcome of that situation in regards to her and her performance after?
Well, it was good. She actually completely changed. And even my inmates, my members on the unit and stuff were like, holy crap, she's changed her tune a little bit with us and she's being nicer and kinder and that kind of stuff. And I actually, moving forward too, I would include her in, I'm like, what do you think happened today? Like, how do you think this would have been different? You know what I mean? So I was asking her for suggestions and things like that. I was very including her very much because I didn't want to think I was punishing her, but I was giving her direct directions because it mattered on that unit. Right. So yeah, she changed her tune. I'm going to be completely honest. She's that type of officer. She just kind of screwed herself in the end anyways with a completely different situation. So she was removed from that unit eventually, but she did good. Like she did good for the type of person she is. Her personality is just so different from others. And I think that's where we have to maneuver differently as well too. Each situation is going to be so different with our different personalities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's why I presented on a continuum. It isn't black or white. It isn't always leading a transformational way. Like sometimes transactional is required. I hate the black and white models that it's like all or nothing, or it's a box. You have to fit in this box or this box or this box. Like sometimes a blend of the two is required. I think it's about creating more of that self-awareness around when one is required versus another. And where do we tend to spend most of our day? And what are the situations that maybe when we're stressed out, we revert back to a certain way of leading? Like when I'm overwhelmed, nervous, anxious, I like to have control and I'll go more transactional. But then I have to stop and be like, whoa. Is this what's really called for? Or is that your default? So that's why I like the continuum. And it's just about having a conversation to create more self-awareness around how we lead and how does it align with our compass too. Out of curiosity, if you go back to your compass and the 360 results, hopefully you got some more. The feedback you got, does it give you an indication or a hint where you're leading? Is it transformational? Is it more transactional? Can anyone speak to that? Welcome, Jackie. I just want to check in on Jackie. How you doing? Jackie was at a conference and she had a presentation. How did it go?
Good. It's basically just I'm at the Ontario Homicide Investigators Association conference in Niagara Falls. So it's been going really well. Some great case studies, picking up on what we can do well and what we can't do well, and where we can, change things and build upon from examples. So it's been really good. But I had a homicide case presentation that I had to give. And when they told me it was on Thursday, I was like, no, can it be at least after 2:30? And then, of course, nothing ever goes as planned in conferences. They typically, timelines get changed. So here we are.
I'm glad that you were able to make it. Yeah. Just so you know what you missed, we talked about female power. What is this thing called female power? And what does it look like when we use our power and when we kind of give it away? Meaning, like, when do we self-advocate and advocate for others, and when do we advocate, or should we advocate and we choose not to? So we talked about that, and then we're aligning it to, like, well, then what are female versus male typical ways of leading that are stereotypical? And then when you look at what the research says in terms of what our agencies and our companies need today, is transformational ways of leading, which tend to be aligned more to stereotypical ways of the way women lead, like empathy and compassion and inclusive decision making, right? Yeah. Versus transactional, which is maybe more male stereotypical. But what we're discovering is, yeah, there's a time and place for both. It's not one or the other. It's seeing it as a continuum and being able to identify in yourself, what way do you tend to lead through day to day? And then the question I ask now is, like, based on your 360 results and the feedback you got, any hints in terms of, like, how you do lead? Because we may think we lead a certain way, but we actually are not. So how do other people perceive our leadership?
Yeah, I would have to say very much how I do lead, which is I would say is more the, I guess, the female aspect of it, and probably why I've felt maybe not as I think because it contradicts how traditionally led people are in our especially in my organization. It's very male dominated, obviously. Even this conference, I walked in, I'm like, yep, we're very, very underrepresented here, right? In this very hard to, I guess, penetrate area. And so I find that I have always struggled in the past with how I lead, but it's not how I see other people leading. And so that I feel like that really restrained me in kind of coming out and moving forward myself. But now knowing that this is, I think just because you just know in your gut, this is the right way to go, right? That whole lead by example and treat people as human beings. It's something as simple as that sometimes, right? Where we get so caught up in with what we do, that we snap sometimes. Like, and I find it more so and I don't know if everybody can speak to this or not, but in policing, I find that happens very easily and very frequently for a number of reasons, whether it's, someone's mental health or just a bad day, something as easy as what we eat can set us off, right? But to really check myself consistently, that's kind of how I try and move forward. Yes, there's a time and a place for things where hard decisions have to be made, but until that comes, we do need to, take a minute and look at, what everything is, like you just said, everything that's going on with me, myself, and how I kind of push that day forward.
So. Well said. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Or even insights from your 360 and what we're sharing today? Alignment or misalignment? In terms of how you think you lead and how other people perceive how you lead.
I think I'm definitely more transformational. However, I find that some of the people that I lead over, some of the officers, they've been doing it a lot longer than me, and there's a lot of times they want just the transactional. They're just like, just tell me the answer. I don't really, I don't care. And they really want me to make that decision. So I'll always start with that, but I find I end up having to go the other way. When they're new people, 100% transformational, right? To empower them to make that decision. But I find some of the older guys, it's just like, okay, I need you to do this, period, full stop.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's a nice segue into what we're about to talk about. It's not just women, men too, when they tend to lead more in a transactional way, what they end up finding is that people are hesitant to make decisions without them telling them what to do. And I'm like, part of is leading in a transformational way is trying to empower other people to think for themselves, critically think when you're not there and they have to make decisions on their own. And seeing maybe a pattern that we have reinforced in others by always making decisions for them. Or sometimes what people tell me is they join a new team, like you're saying, Rhonda, like you join a new team, they've kind of been there before you, they've learned ways of thinking and being. And if they were led by leaders who are very transactional, they have over time learned to not make decisions by themselves, but to always seek that permission to act before they act. And so they join a new team and they find like the people who've been there for a long time need to be told what to do. And they find it very challenging to try to, if that's the culture, that's what culture is, right? And trying to shift that culture can be very difficult and frustrating. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think actually, as I look at where we're at now, let's move on. Let's get into coaching, the coach approach. So let me just ask again, because I think I asked this last week, but how many of you are familiar with the concept of like coaching, not sports coaching, but coaching within a corporate workplace context? Has anyone experienced it? Is anyone doing a course on coaching, getting a certificate in coaching through the International Federation of Coaching? No? Okay, so coaching is, okay. Probably the best way to talk about coaching is to show you a quick 2-minute video of me talking about coaching. So this is a video that just really talks about our approach to coaching. So it's a methodology that we created. It's called CATHI, Coach Approach Through Humble Inquiry. It's a different way to communicate with people where it's really grounded in transformational leadership. So I'm going to have you watch this 2-minute video. And what I'd like you to do is, as you're watching it, I want you to think about times that you have used this approach, because I think naturally you have at times used this approach. And think about times when you maybe should have and you didn't. Okay, so times that you have used it and times that maybe you should have and you didn't, based on what you're hearing me describe what CATHI is. And then we'll break down the definition and I'll ask you to share those examples. And then we'll do another activity, because CATHI is actually broken down into 4 phases. And so before we get into the 4 phases, let's actually just talk about what CATHI is. Okay, let me play the video. One way to create and nurture Can you hear it? Hold on, let me look, see if I can see all. Were you able to hear the video? Yeah, okay, let me press play. Psychological safeties by using a powerful communication strategy titled CATHI, which is the coach approach through humble inquiry. This is our take on coaching that can be used to communicate with others. A coach approach method of communication occurs through humble inquiry and empathetic listening. One method of building trusting relationships is through transparent and consistent communication, which is built on seeking to understand the experiences of the other person while temporarily suspending yours. Some difficult conversations can be managed using the CATHI approach. Of course, there are certain situations that are not ideal for CATHI. For example, high-risk situations that require immediate direction. However, as you learn more about the CATHI approach in this lesson, we encourage you to think about different types of situations where you could apply its principles. Remember, the goal of CATHI is to ensure everyone feels seen, heard, and understood. This is accomplished by listening carefully and responding thoughtfully with a seek to understand first mindset, and asking powerful questions that will provide the other person the opportunity to explore and find solutions to the problems they are experiencing. When we ask powerful questions, we put the other person in the conversation at the center of finding their own solutions that will enable them to achieve their full potential. If the goal is to build trust with another person, then asking is more effective than telling. If we can act from the position of curiosity, we suspend our assumptions and beliefs that can run interference with our ability to empower others. In the next video, you will get to see the CATHI approach in action. One method of, there we go. Hold on a second. Okay. Coach approach to humble inquiry. Okay. Let me stop sharing so I can see all of you. All right. So tell me about it. Okay, first of all, questions about Kathy? What were your key takeaways from that? And then a time that you, let's start with the key takeaways. What were some of the key takeaways that you took away from Kathy in terms of like what it is? What do you think, Stephanie?
I like the distinction between the difficult conversations can be managed, but Kathy's to be used in certain situations. In high risk situations, we want to make sure that we use immediate direction. And then I like that we were through this approach, we're putting the person that we are coaching at the helm, sort of, so to resolve their issue as best they can, give them the tools to solve their problem.
Right. Okay, we did talk about self-determination theory, did we not? A couple of workshops ago, right? It's based on 3 human psychological needs. If you really want to motivate someone else, even yourself, you should meet the 3 following psychological needs. The first one was autonomy, right? I have control over my own life. I can make decisions for myself. Remember that? From that, if we're able to make choices for ourselves and take action on them, it really does build a sense of competence, strength, confidence. And the third psychological need is relationship building, right? If we can build good, trusting relationships with other people, it really helps us build the confidence that we need to take action, make decisions, take a risk, make a mistake, and learn from that. That's self-determination in a nutshell. Kathy is the best way to build self-determination in other people for all the reasons that Stephanie just said. When time isn't of the essence, it isn't a critical emergency situation, you have the gift of time to help someone build their self-determination by asking them powerful, when we say powerful, we mean open-ended. It's not a yes or no question. Non-leading, meaning I'm not going to ask them questions to get them to do what I want them to do. I'm really curious to hear what their thoughts are, what their ideas are. I'm going to suspend my expertise, what I think I know is the right answer, to get them to think it through. That is how you build a sense of autonomy and confidence in other people. And at the core of Kathy is empathy. It's relationship building. It's you trying to suspend your own belief system, your own, like what you think is the right answer, to really hear from someone else. It's not always easy to do, because when we start to practice Kathy, I find people do tend to ask a lot of close-ended leading questions. It's kind of our MO. It's the way we've learned how to communicate. So this takes a lot of thoughtful, intentional practice. And I'll be honest, like in a like over the course of like this 6 weeks course, or even just a little bit of time that we're spending on it, won't make you an expert in Kathy. And I'm not trying to develop executive level coaches, but I'm trying to introduce a different way to communicate by asking more questions that you can incorporate into the way you already communicate with other people. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, can you think of a time that you have used a similar approach like this? What was the outcome? And we've already started to talk a little bit about that. I mean, Jackie, you're at a homicide conference. I would think that when it comes to interviewing subjects or suspects, you use this, you ask a lot of open-ended questions. They're not leading, right?
Yeah, actually, I was just waiting to see if someone else wanted to speak and give them the floor first. But yeah, I use this very regularly with interviewing, whether it's a child right up to an adult. It's basically help me understand, help me understand where you're at right now, where you are right now. And that's kind of how I start all of my interviews. To be honest, I use it with my kids as well. And like, if they ask something as simple as, how do you do this? Well, how would you do it if you didn't have anybody to ask? Think about it. It just kind of puts it back at them to think about it for a second, instead of just telling them what to do. It's something that I've adapted just for raising children, because I don't want to do all of their crap for them all the time. So something as simple as that, right? But interviews every single time, because otherwise, if you don't ask open-ended questions, you're leading them and you're just going to get annihilated on the stand. So
Exactly. And we could use the same approach with our colleagues. We can also use the same approach when we're leading up to our bosses. I found that sometimes when my boss would make decisions, or I was trying to influence, when we talk about influence is relationship building, right? It's not about leading through a transactional way, it's about leading through a transformational way. If you're really trying to influence, especially your supervisor, who in many ways dictates and determines what you do day to day, and you're trying to have more influence so that you feel empowered and more autonomous to make some of those decisions on your own and have influence in your own day to day. I found leading through Kathy when I was having a conversation with my boss was critical, right? I took the position of like, okay, you made a decision that really impacts my day to day and my team. Can you tell me a little bit more about the purpose of that decision? What's the context behind that? I may make an assumption about you're just leading in a transactional way, but maybe there's some real challenges that you're faced with as my boss that has influenced your decision to do X. I would love to learn more about that. Just by getting them to start to speak about that, they start to understand that some of the decisions they've made have maybe led to a circumstance or an outcome that wasn't necessarily the right one. And so just by asking questions, they come to the natural conclusion on their own, and then provides a space for me to open up and talk about what I may need. But I find when you start to ask questions, if people are defensive, especially when it comes to difficult and challenging conversations, if people are defensive and you just kind of take a step back, a deep breath, and you're like, how are you doing? What brings you here today? I would love to learn more a little bit about that decision that was made. It kind of changes the tone, right? If somebody, like, let's go to the mood meter. You're starting a conversation in the red. And if you take a step back and start asking open-ended questions, people will naturally move out of the red, hopefully maybe more into the green or a bit more grounded, less high energy, less negative, which then creates a space to have more open-ended question, like a better conversation. So I find Kathy is really good when I'm feeling tense. I'm like, don't lead through what you want. Take a step back and just ask some questions. It gives me even a time to think through things. What do you think about that? Okay. Who else? Can you tell me about a time that maybe you wanted to lead through Kathy and you didn't? And what was the outcome of that? Jackie.
Nobody else has anything to say.
Go for
I mean,
it.
I again have this very frequently, a while back, before I started or adjusting kind of but just in response to just reacting to something that a supervisor did, and without them coming in. I mean, it happens day in and day out at our organization where decisions are made without kind of having conversations with the people that it does impact, which I get that I see both sides of it. I see that there's the management perspective side where, there's things that we aren't supposed to know or can't know. At the same time, maybe look at those things and say, how much is it going to affect things if we do give them a little bit? Or it's no different than holdback evidence in one of my cases, right? We want to give the media as much as we can, but at the same time, there's a lot of information that we have to hold back. And for reasons that we don't really want to give out as well, because you don't want to give your investigative techniques away to, the public. So just different examples like that. But I've definitely changed how I approach, management at my organization, and saying, okay, these are the things that I would like to do, and these are the reasons why. And I find articulation is key. If you're able to articulate why you're doing what you're doing in any situation, people are going to understand you and respect you more than saying, don't do this. You're not allowed to do this. This isn't going to work. Okay, but elaborate on that. Tell me why it's not going to work. And it just gives people that little bit more to satisfy that I guess rage sometimes, so that it kind of starts to climb when you're just, or frustration, I guess is a better word, that starts to build when they just make these unilateral
Right.
decisions without kind of involving anybody.
Right. Okay. You said a couple of things that made me think too. I know I lost the thought, but trying to think about time that I think I mentioned it earlier, but thank you for that, Jai. These are really great examples. And I mean, earlier I gave an example of when I don't lead through Kathy, it really does make my team feel a bit disempowered. And so at the end of the day, this is what I wanted to say. It's a non-directive way of communicating. And what we mean by non-directive is we're going to make the assumption that the person that has come to us for the answer probably already has the solution. And maybe we need to be curious as to why they're not exploring that for themselves, or why they don't necessarily have the confidence. Is that what's going on, to come to you with a solution rather than just tell me what to do? And so when we're non-directive, we shift the accountability off of us onto them. And what I found is when some people are not wanting to make choices for themselves, or always going to someone to say, tell me what to do, and you dig a bit deeper under the surface there, what you start to discover is it's a lack of wanting to have accountability. And if you just tell me what to do and it doesn't work out, then it's your fault, not mine. But if we're trying to create an innovative organization, a culture where we're pushing people to stay ahead of the curve, do we do that by always telling people what to do? Or do we do that by encouraging them to start thinking for themselves? And so when some people tell me, it's like, when I join a unit where everyone's like, just tell me what to do. Yes, will it take some time? Will it take patience? Will there be trial and errors? You try to shift that level of decision making off of you back onto them. Yes, but you have to start somewhere. And I think asking more open-ended questions and being curious is a way to do that. So let me walk you through the phases of Kathy here. Okay. And then I'm going to split you into two groups. So these are the 4 phases. We call it the E4 framework. So you're like, okay, thank you for Kathy. That's great. Ask more open-ended questions. Well, how do I do that? Here's a framework to support that. It isn't meant to be followed in a prescriptive way. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. It's a phase because you may go in and out of phases. And the phases are very much interrelated and support each other. But it's a way to kind of like a start point, a middle point, and an end point. And the more you practice it and do it, the phases become less important, because really what becomes important is the kind of questions that you're asking. But if you're trying to figure out where to start, this could be a way to do that. And so the first phase is about engage. So engage is just like starting the conversation. Then slowly, once you started that conversation and it's going, you start to explore. And then from there, you move to empower. And then from there, you go to excel. So what I would like to do, so I'll give you a little bit of a high level explanation of each phase, but then I want to put you into groups. And what I'd love each group to do is like take the time that you need. And this is in page Powerful Coaching 33 in your workbook. I want you to spend a little bit of time in your group. So groups 1 and 2, you're just going to look at engage and explore. What is the purpose of engage? What are we trying to do and achieve in the phase called engage? And what are we trying to do in the phase called explore? And what's one good, powerful question we can ask? So there's a list of questions there already in your workbook, but what is a new question that you can ask in each of those phases? And then groups 3 and 4, you're going to do the same thing, but for empower and excel. So engage, like I said, starting the question, it's building rapport. Explore is about what's the issue at hand and the root cause. Empower is like getting the person to come up with their own solution. Excel is about what the next steps are. So that's a very high level description of each phase, but I want you to spend a little bit more time in regards to like really what are we trying to accomplish in this phase, especially if we're leading in a transformational way. If we're going to not be directive, if we're going to take a step back, then what does that look like in each phase? How does that sound? Does that make sense? So let me open the rooms. I have to recreate the rooms because we only have 3 rooms. Assign manually. 1 second, and I want 4 rooms. Create 2. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Well, actually, I'm gonna recreate the rooms. There's only 3 rooms. So okay, we're gonna do this. Is what we're gonna do. Room 1 you're going to have, you're going to have explore. So room one is Christina, Leah, and Zena. So you will look at explore. What are you trying to achieve and explore? Look at the questions and what are like one or two questions that you would ask that's not on that list in your workbook. Does that make sense? Okay. Room two, we have Jackie, Rhonda, and Stephanie. I would like you to look at empower. What are you trying to achieve in empower? Like if you're leading in a transformational way, what does that look like in empower? The purpose of empower. And one or two questions that are already not in that workbook that you would like to ask to achieve that purpose, Okay. How does that sound? Good. Room three, we have Amanpreet, Farah, and Nicole. You will have, sorry, I said room two, you had explore, right? Jackie, Ron said you had explore. Room three, you have empower. Purpose of empower. What are you trying to achieve in empower? What does that look like? And one or two questions that you'd also like to ask that's not in your workbook. How's that sound? Good. Okay. And I'll give you 5 minutes and then I'll bring you back and we'll debrief. Okay, I'm going to open all rooms.
You're muted there. We can't hear you.
Oh God, I didn't realize I'm muted. Okay. Hey, we'll wait for 3 more seconds. Make sure everyone is back. Okay. All right. Now, if I remember correctly, I think it's room one was Christina and Leah did explore. Room two was Jackie, Ron, and Stephanie empower, right? Or did I screw that up?
We did explore.
Oh, you did explore. Okay, yeah, you did explore. Sorry, you did explore. Room two was empower, right? Was that Jackie, Rhonda, and Stephanie?
Well, wait, what it looked like is, I think you told us empower, but then the way the rooms go, so we ended up doing explore as well.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, and then last room, Nicole, you guys did Excel. You folks did Excel. Okay, all right. Let's start with explore then. Okay, someone from room one who did explore, what purpose? And then we'll go to room two, Rhonda's room, and be like, what questions did you come up with? That's how we'll debrief it. Okay, so room one, Christina or Leah, what did you come up with in terms of the purpose?
I'll go ahead. The ultimate question we came up with was envisioning we're talking with someone who's going through some sort of conflict is to ask them, what would you do differently? And it was kind of interesting that came up because I actually dealt with something like that yesterday because I had a coworker who was involved in a code where she had to gain physical control of an inmate, and she came to me and said, "Oh my God, like I wish I had done things differently. Like the code went fine, like no one was hurt, everything was handled, but she was ruminating and just spiraling about how she wished she had done it differently." And I just said, "Hey, like don't approach it with that perspective. Approach it with, hey, like I said, think of it of next time she's going to have to deal with this again. How would you do it differently? Think about that. And then you will deal with it differently down the road. The only person beating you up is yourself. No one else is thinking about it." So it was just that was the ultimate question for Explore, was asking, how would you deal with it differently with a positive perspective shift?
Okay. And then, okay, so that's a good question to ask. Thank you. And then maybe I'll turn it to room two then. So these are the kind of questions that you're asking. What is the purpose of Explore?
I think for us, I think you gave us the hint. What are you wanting to achieve? Because our questions were very much the same as the first group is, how can it be better? Like just
Okay.
opening that up. So that's what we took out of it.
Okay. And I just realized I kind of leapfrogged over engage. I do want to spend a little bit of time engage, and then it'll lead into explore. So engage gets the conversation started. How are you doing? What do you want to focus on and talk about today? Engage is about rapport building. And the point of engage is not to rush through engage. I mean, I guess the circumstance also depends. Like if somebody comes to you and they want to get right into the issue. But I think there's some time to we do engage with you all the time. Let's do the check-in. How are you feeling? What's one word that's capturing how you're doing? We go around the room. That is all about engage. Setting the tone, the context, getting someone to, they're high energy, getting them to come down a little bit, co-regulate a bit. But what's on your mind? What do you want to focus on today? So engage is important to spend some time there. And then when people are ready, including yourself, you want to get into explore. So the purpose of explore is really to get the person who you're trying to coach, if you will, clarify the issue for themselves. So it's an issue-focused, issue-finding phase. So what's the root cause? What is the question at hand that you want to focus? Like, what do you want to explore today? I have what are potential enablers and barriers? What is it about the situation that you find problematic or challenging? So it's really exploring that issue and diving deeper into that. Because sometimes people will come to you and they'll present a laundry list of problems and issues, which can be very overwhelming even for one person to address. So part of the explore is to what is the most important issue you want to talk about today? It's trying to take something that's maybe really big in their mind and breaking it down into simple pieces and parts where they can start to explore one thing at a time, or at least the most critical thing at that moment in time. To help them better get a grasp and a handle of really what the issue is that they want to explore. Does that make sense? And sometimes we don't even have the self-awareness around what the real problem is. So I won't even go back to what you said, like people who hold grudges. Why are you holding, let's talk, and they always say, try not to ask why questions, but ask what or how come? How come you think that is? How come we want to avoid why questions?
You don't want them to be defensive, because
exactly.
by putting why, you're actually putting a judgment on it. So, or that's my perception.
Exactly. Yeah. So if someone is if you remember the grudge issue, it's kind of how come, tell me more about, and you always try to use the words that they use. If they're I'm really still upset with this person. Tell me more about, how come you're upset with this person? What is where's this coming from? How is that serving you? How may you move forward? What's preventing you from wanting to move forward? It's about asking those how come, what questions, not the accusatory, maybe why questions, and helping that person really understand the root cause of the issue at hand or what the main issue is. So let's go back to some of the questions you said. Like Christina, you had said, how may you do that differently? Could be a good explore question because it gets them to look at what happened and to explore maybe a different path or avenue going forward. Yes. Okay. Any other questions that you may ask in the explore phase from both groups who did explore? Okay, empower. No one did empower, but let's talk about it in the group. What do you think empower is? What's the purpose of empower? If you've engaged, you've set the tone, built rapport, you've helped the person clarify what the main issue is. What does empower do? It's basically what's the next step? Sorry, Farah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think empowering someone gives them a path forward that they can follow.
That's it. Yeah. Find the solution that lies within them. Yes. So what would be a good question that you could ask and empower then? If you're trying to empower them, build and nurture that sense of autonomy, and start to nurture that confidence in them that they can do it, what are some good questions you would ask? I know it's situation dependent, but even just overarching kind of like, like good empower questions.
What have you done in the past when faced with a
Yes.
similar situation?
Yeah. What's worked for you in the past before? Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Because it draws from past positive experiences. And I think it was Christina was like asking questions, even in the explore phase, like that are positive focused, empowered focus, strength, like focusing on strengths. What strengths do you have? That's why I always say sometimes, it is important to spend time figuring out what your strengths are. But if you're working with other people, what are their strengths, and spending time with them and developing those relationships to understand what those strengths are. And then asking them to draw from those strengths. What are some strengths that you have that can help you take the next step forward? Another question. Let's see what I have. What haven't you tried yet? And sometimes we're focusing on all the things that are not working, but maybe there's something we haven't tried that could potentially work. Another one that I ask and empower too, sometimes we make assumptions of what other people think and feel. And then we just get caught up in that. I can't do that because he thinks like this, or I can't do that because I know she's doing that. Or this is what she or they think of me. But when I used to have people do this exercise where, like, if you're faced with a situation, draw two columns, one's facts and one's assumption, and write all of the facts of the situation and write what all the assumptions are. And what you tend to see is that the fact list is very short and the assumption list is very long. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that is fact could be really captured from a CCTV camera. It's like, yeah, there was two people and they were talking, but everything else that was said and our interpretation of what people mean is just an assumption. So one of the questions I have here is, how much of your experience is actually based on factual observation and facts, and how much of it is based on your interpretation of the situation? So sometimes when people realize I basically, I'm making assumptions. I'm interpreting what that person actually meant when they said or did that. And if we can situate it more in terms of like, this is my interpretation or my assumption, it may give me the confidence needed to go and have that conversation that I may have been reluctant to have. Does that make sense? So empower is just making that other person feel like they can take the next step themselves. And this is where all the accountability comes in. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have to you have to figure out what you're going to do, but I believe you can do it. And if we can build that accountability in the empower phase, they're more likely to execute it if it's their idea rather than ours. So it's building that sense of accountability in other people. How does that sound? Okay. Excel, our last room. Purpose of Excel. What are we trying to achieve in this phase?
I think sorry, excuse me. We've gone through the process of getting them to like in a point where they're probably comfortable moving forward, comfortable with that they've gotten feedback and stuff on. So now we're just ensuring that they're continuing on the right path. Whether it's like positive reinforcement all the time, prompting, just always checking in, that kind of stuff. Just being there for them.
Yeah. Sometimes we forget the follow-up. So part of it is like, okay, what's the first step that you're going to take, right? How will you celebrate success when you've achieved that? Like one of the questions I have is like, what's that first small step? Like a lot of people sometimes are reluctant to take that first step because they can't see that first step. You just see the big, massive problem or issue in front of them. If you've done a good job in the explore and empower phase, they've taken this mammoth problem or issue and they've broken it down into like small bite-size, manageable issues that they can tackle. So by the time you get to Excel, the answer is really obvious. And what is that first step that they need to take? But part of Excel is like saying, like, what can I do to support you going forward? Whether it's a colleague, whether it's your supervisor, whether it's a direct report, what can I do to better support you? And that is the follow-up and the check-in that sometimes we forget about. So once again, it's that accountability check-in. Okay, you're going to go and you're going to do the thing you said you're going to do. How do I support you and how do I follow up with you to ensure continued success? And that's what I mean by excelling. in the decisions and the choices that you've made. How does that sound? Okay. What I'd like to do is, and this is where we'll end, and then when we come back next week, when we talk about my success circle, we'll continue the conversation on what we didn't have a chance to talk about today, which is confidence gap and imposter theory. And so many of the things that we talked about today, if we embrace a transformational way to lead, we do incorporate a Kathy approach into the way that we speak. It will help us and support others in finding the confidence within to take action and to make decisions that make us feel empowered and autonomous. And so we'll start our next workshop on that. Because I think it'll be a nice way to wrap up what we did today. But one of the things I'd like to do is I want to show you Kathy in action. So I have a video. It's a 6-minute interactive video of me and Katie actually having a conversation. And so I'm going to start the conversation with Katie, and then the video will pause. And then I'm going to ask you to be like, okay, we're in this phase of Kathy. What question would you want to ask Katie? And so it's a way for you to practice it. And so you can draw from the questions in your workbook, or you can come up with one in the spot. But if you were me and you were supporting Katie through this issues that she's trying to deal with, what would you ask her that in a way that is like open-ended and it's not leading? And this is the tricky part where I find a lot of us will, I will lean towards the close-ended leading question. So let's see how well we do by watching this video. Okay, so let me there we go, bring this up. Open this up. Okay. There we go. Okay. Oh, let me just make sure I'm sharing my sound. Sharing. I didn't share my sound. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay, here we go. 1 second. I want to make sure that I can see you all on my screen too as the video is going. Okay, let's go.
So good to see you. You reached out, you wanted to talk a little bit. So what's going on?
Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't connected since I started the new manager position. So kind of wanted to talk about it. It's mostly going well, but I'm struggling with one of my team members. So I thought chatting with you would be helpful.
Okay, so we are in the engagement phase. Let me hit pause. Okay. Let me find you all here on my screen. Okay, what would you ask Katie? We're in the engagement phase. We're kicking it off. We're building rapport. What would you like to ask her?
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, let's see what I ask.
Well, I'm so glad you reached out. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about this one team member.
Yeah, I mean, first thing to note is that he was in the acting manager position before I stepped into it a few months ago. So potentially some awkwardness or tension just around that. He also has a lot of experience, quite a few years more than me with the company and just in the industry in general. So that I find has me doubting myself a little bit, or worried that maybe he's looking at my lack of experience in comparison to his as then less able to be a good manager in this position. So that's kind of my own thing that I'm grappling with. But I've also noticed some issues with his engagement in meetings. He's often distracted or late, and the team is starting to notice that he's a little less engaged. So those are some of the challenges.
Okay, we're in the explore phase. What questions would you want to ask Katie here?
Have you ever experienced anything like this in the past? What were your successes from that? Or was there a success from that?
Okay, so close-ended, yes or no? How would you maybe?
Oh, shit. Shoot.
See, I do it all the time too. So how maybe you want to make that more open-ended?
Just keep it like, tell me a time where you've experienced this in the past.
Okay, let's see what I ask.
Okay. What has the team said to you that indicates that they've noticed?
Yeah, after the last couple of team meetings where we've got everyone together in the office, a few people have pulled me aside afterwards and asked, like, what was the deal? He was on his laptop the whole time. I think a few people felt disrespected that he wasn't paying attention to their presentation. And yeah, just the chronic lateness to meetings has been noticed by me, but the team has brought it up with me as well.
I'm going to pause real quick. How come I asked that question? And it was different than the question that Jackie would have asked, which goes to show you can ask different questions and it'll go maybe in a different place. And that's okay. The whole point of Explore is that if you're not trying to satisfy your curiosity, you're really trying to help that person identify really what the issue is and maybe some of their assumptions around it. So how come you think I asked that question?
I think to show the difference between what is facts, like what she knows is the problem, and what she's imagining is the problem.
Yeah. Stephanie, what were we gonna say? What were we gonna say?
Yeah, I was going to say to get another perspective of it. We know what her thoughts are, just as Zena said, but we can get someone else's ideas on it as well, and how it's impacting the team too.
Thank you. As a manager, you're responsible for the team, and if someone's behavior on the team is maybe impacting other people's behavior, then it's important to know that. But it also checks your assumptions, like are your observations being perceived the same way as other people? And then that may indicate that this is something that you do need to address. Okay.
What's the relationship like with the other team members between you and them?
Really good. Overall, it's been really positive since I stepped into the manager position. The team seems really excited with the vision I've put forward. I've got a strong team and they seem to be working really collaboratively, really well. And I've received strong feedback. So it's going well, other than this one individual.
Okay. All right. We're in the Empower. What may you ask now?
Could you ask how do you think you can engage him?
Yeah. Okay. That's what I ask.
What are some things that you've done to connect with this one individual?
I mean, I did the same approach with him as I did the rest of the team. So right when I stepped into the manager position, I took everyone for a coffee one-on-one, a bit more casual, informal, just to get to know everyone. He was late for that by quite a bit. So that didn't give us much time. And then it was like pulling teeth. I really couldn't get much out of him. So after that, he had to reschedule 2 of our one-on-ones, and we actually haven't connected since then. So other than that, I haven't done anything specific to follow up, but yeah.
Okay. How come?
I mean, it's been busy. And also I've just sort of been in my head about it. I'm not really sure the best approach. I'm worried that I might come across in the meeting by bringing some of this stuff up as, I don't know, he might see me as not fully competent or not taking charge. I don't know. I'm just in my head a lot and I'm putting it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't address it, how will it increase or contribute to your credibility as a leader?
Yeah, I know I can't keep putting it off. I mean, the team's not working as well as it could. So I know folks are going to get more frustrated with him, with me for not dealing with it. And I want him to be engaged. And he has so much experience that I want to pull on for me and the team. So yeah, I can't put it off. I will then be festering too much with this. I mean, I'm already dreading coming into the office on days that I know I need to interact with him, and that's not great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What would you ask here? We're in the last phase.
Maybe like, when are you going to have that meeting?
Yeah. So like, yeah, I think that's a good question because like it will help her focus on like that next step and think about when that will actually happen rather than just like, I'll get to it one day. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What to ask.
Okay. So what's the next step for you then in terms of addressing this issue with him?
I mean, it's pretty clear I need to just have a one-on-one with him and finally get that scheduled and have a bit of a difficult conversation. I think bring up some of my concerns, some of the behavior I've noticed, the impact that that's had, and just get on the same page, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned some things about him that are positives, strengths, experience.
Yep.
How will you address that in the conversation or mention that?
Yeah. I mean, I am worried part of this potential lack of engagement or whatever it is him maybe not feeling valued. So I want to make sure and really communicate sincerely that I do value his experience and think, I mean, our team is so lucky to have him, and how can we best use him in a way that he wants to be engaged with, like what projects, what sorts of areas of expertise can we lean on. So I want him to feel valued. I want him to hear that from me, and hopefully, like I said, a sincere way.
Absolutely. I think what you just laid out is a good action plan, but also making sure that as his manager, you're recognizing what he brings to the team, while still holding him accountable to some of the behaviors that is not contributing to a cohesive environment.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for chatting with me about this.
Thank you. Yeah.
I want you to know I'm around anytime you need to speak, and I wish you the best of luck when you do have that conversation with him.
Thank you. I feel prepared to have this difficult conversation, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. There we go. Let me just get out of the screen sharing mode here. Okay. All right. Who did most of the talking in that conversation?
Katie did
Yeah.
most of the talking.
Yeah. So in a Catholic conversation, you're doing like 20-30% of the talking, or 60-40 even, but they are doing most of the talking. And if you are speaking, it's really about asking those questions. So embracing silence too is important, because you may ask a question and there may be silence. And that is okay. What happens during silence? What's going on when someone is saying nothing?
They're thinking about the situation and what could they do.
Yeah, sometimes you've hit on a really powerful question when it stumps them and they don't know how to answer it. If they don't understand the question, they will ask you, can you say that question again? But if they say nothing, they're like, typically like, that's a good question. And if they're struggling through it, let them struggle through it. That's the explore phase, right? It's not about rescuing them and jumping them and giving them the answer. It's about sitting with a bit of the discomfort that we may feel as we watch someone trying to figure it out. And we know we're doing coaching well when we're letting them sit with it. It's a lot more powerful for them to work through it than you telling them what to do. Because at the end of the day, you can't always tell people what to do. They have to be able to think for themselves. And if you're really trying to nurture self-determination in other people and motivate them, this is the way to do it. And if you recall, I said sometimes the path to self-awareness isn't always a pleasant one. It's one that is a little bit arduous and difficult and challenging. But that's how we start to develop true self-awareness, which is the foundation of emotional intelligence. And so you're doing Kathy well when you're speaking less, when you're asking good questions, and you're embracing silence. That's when you know you're doing Kathy well. And so if you're wanting to try it out, practice those three things. Am I asking questions? Am I being quiet to let people think? And am I speaking less? And if anything, this could be a good activity from now until next week. Try and like at the end of like maybe, let's see, we're Thursday today. Maybe at the end of today or even tomorrow, stop and reflect, like how many times did I use Kathy? How many times could have I used Kathy and I didn't? And when did I do it and when did I do it well? So like maybe try, like, can you think of a conversation you need to have today and tomorrow where you may want to practice Kathy? Yeah. Okay. So try it out and then stop after the conversation, reflect. What did I do well? What could I do better next time? How did that conversation go? And then maybe that's where we start next week. What were your key takeaways from Kathy? Did you get a chance to try it out? What did you learn from that? And what did that do to your own sense of confidence too? And then we'll get into the confidence gap and the imposter theory and talk about how maybe utilizing an approach like Kathy can help others, including ourselves, build that sense of confidence, which is integral to self-determination. If we can't find and nurture confidence in ourselves, it will be hard to be self-determined to keep moving through obstacles to achieve the goals that are important for us. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so that's where we'll end. I was hoping I know I planted the seed that we'd finish a little bit early, but I'm like, we need to finish Kathy. I wanted to get through Kathy. So we're thank you for hanging on there a little bit earlier. We will wrap it up today. So for next week, it is my success circle. There is in the learning management system an article called The 9 Types of People I Would Have in My Success Circle. If you can, read that. It's not too long of an article, but the article talks about those different types of people. And that's where I want to focus on next week too, is like who's in your success circle? And is there a difference between a network and a success circle? What does each one mean to you? And we're going to explore that. How does that sound? Any questions for before we say goodbye in terms of what you need to do in next week? No. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Usually I stay on to see if there's any questions or thoughts, but I have to disconnect or else the cleaning lady's going to kick me out of my room. So have a good afternoon. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you all next week. Let me know if you have any questions. Just email me. Okay. Bye-bye.